I don't know if that actually is. I know it's helpful for Ireland to have one province feeding the team, but I don't see any value. Like if Connacht build that stadium, when Connacht build that stadium, if their team aren't healthy in a healthy enough place to give the fans belief that they're working towards something, it'll be hard to sell it. You know what I mean? And you know, we've seen stadiums in football where the team drops and the spectators drop as well. Like, so that's all. It's not a bag on anyone else. It's just effectively how I see it at the moment. And some of it's money and some of it's lack of a plan. But I'd love the RFU to have a real clear focus on how we can have four strong provinces. Even if you go naturally, Leinster are always going to be the best because of the raw materials. I'm not blaming Leinster in this, but I don't like to see three others. I don't like this to come out of Thomond Park and Munster fans say to me that they're losing love of the team. And look at these Munster fans, like the Munster fans for me were often at their best and strongest when the team weren't winning. You know what I mean? But as long as they could see a team who put it all out there, which I think they could the other night. But in their mind, it's this whole thing around, do we even think we can compete with them anymore? And the problem is they'd watch Connacht compete with Leinster 4 or 5 days before that or whatever, week before that. Now, I know it wasn't Leinster's first team. And I know Munster had loads of injuries. But like at Leopardstown on the same day, you know, there was Jordy Barrett, James Lowe, Jemison Gibson Park, you know, I don't think Furlong was up there, but he was unavailable. Dan Sheehan, RG Snyman, Jack Conan. You know, Leinster had a team unavailable as well, effectively, that could have easily started in a URC game and won.
Like I've had a lingering concern for a while, just on a national level, that like if the Ireland team becomes even more Leinster centric than it is now, you might lose a little bit of buy-in across the country even towards that. And that is the cash cow. It is what sustains the professional game in this country, as has been pointed out 1,000 times. But even something like Sam Prendergast overtaking Jack Crowley, which could be very well the case, and if it is, it'll be the case on merit. Like, I think Munster fans may look at that and be like, well, what actually is the point of of this anymore? You know, I know it's very existential and these things can flip around very quickly, but just infrastructurally, that doesn't seem possible at the moment. And I guess, Bert, my question is like, if you're trying to, the important thing I think, like the important distinction to make is that like weakening Leinster isn't what anybody wants, I don't think, or at least not what we would call for on the podcast. I'm sure some people do want it. It's just about trying to bring the others up to the point where they are competitive or more competitive. Like you pointed out in this podcast 3-4 times last season, with the turnover in the other three provinces squads and with the fact that their budgets were going to be reduced, they were going to be weaker teams this season. And they are. Like they absolutely are. Injuries notwithstanding, their squads are weaker. And like the solution to me is you kind of have to loosen the NIQ rule. I know it'll feel counterintuitive or counterproductive in the longer term, but like I think forget about the front row ban. You know, like Ulster need front rows. Munster need a front row across every position, I would say.
Yeah.
I think maybe take into consideration making more allowances for those three provinces to try and climb that ladder a little bit. Because like we are talking now quite seriously about a URC season where maybe any of the other three might be at risk of missing out the playoffs. Munster, you presume, will probably make it. Ulster have a little bit of momentum now. Like Connacht are in serious danger.
Yeah.
Champions Cup, like Munster may not make it out of their pool. Ulster won't. Connacht aren't even in it. You know, like this isn't good. You know what I mean?
So no, I agree with you. And look at that. I wish I wasn't being proven right on it because like it is. And I know speaking to the coaches of those teams, they didn't want to be losing those players. You know, not all of them. They know they knew they were going to be weaker, and that's demoralizing as well for them to be trying to build something and know that you're being hamstrung by finance, hamstrung by inability to sign, you know, non-Irish qualified. I think that's the only short-term option to give them a better chance of being competitive is to limit that, and even put in restrictions, you know, like Leinster have with RG and Geordie, around, you know, how often they can play, etc. But for the big games, for the games that they have to win, you know, let them have the tools. to do it. But I think David Humphreys is a great chance for him to show some real creativity and some strong leadership in it. Like, so the article in the Sindo, the headline was as you said about the gap getting bigger. Like at the moment there's a massive anti-Leinster sentiment out there. So like and that's not. And for me, there's a social media rugby fans who obviously engage in something like that. And then there's the people I spoke about, who aren't social media, but who often have different points of view or are less vocal on it. But as I said, and it was pre and post match the other night in Thomond, like fellas from Clonwilliam and clubs like that who just basically feel disillusioned with the whole thing. Disillusioned, and it's not Munster Rugby's fault. It's just the way things have gone. But it's if you lose those people, if you lose them, it can be quite hard to get them back because they are loyal fans. They're all loyal fans, Twitter fans as well. But there's two parties here, and at the moment, the kind of like the Mac Hansen outburst, effectively, as far as I could see, was a refereeing criticism, but it became anti-Leinster. It became that amongst the other fans on Twitter anyway, it became that it was Leinster getting all the decisions. But I don't think. My understanding of it, digging a little bit deeper, is that Connacht feel hard done by in most of the pros. It's not just against Leinster, but it became Leinster. The IRFU want Leinster to win, and that's what the referees are helping Leinster win. I don't see that as being an issue at all. I just think Leinster set up best in terms of everything that goes into making that team what they are, and now we need to try and find a way of helping the others. Not the same model because it can't be the same, but find ways of getting them the right support to allow their own Indigenous players, come through in the right environment where they have the tools to compete. That's kind of a very simplified version of it.
The online fans are like almost the militant wing of each province's fan group. You can kind of take it with a pinch of salt sometimes in the sense that they are so one-eyed, some of them. And like, listen, fan as a word, like it's derived from fanatic. It's meant to be almost.
I enjoy it. I don't mind. I'm just saying.
No, 100%.
I'm now sensing both.
Yes, groups. It is starting to bleed over. Is my point. Yeah, it is starting to reach the stands a little bit. Look, you mentioned there a moment ago, saying Munster's case, like, oh, this isn't Munster's fault. Like, I think it is important to acknowledge, like, some of it is, and like they've had a decade really without producing like an international type 5 forward, like it. And I know you can point towards resources and all of the various advantages that Leinster have and make use of very well. But like, there is a historical problem here for Munster and some of the other provinces. You can absolutely make a case equally that they are starting to correct that now. Like I see some of the guys in Munster's academy say Michael Foy, really talented second row coming through, watch him play senior cup, like really good player. I'm interested to see how he goes. Evan O'Connell the same, 2 second rows there. But like for years, they just haven't been doing that. And like you kind of you reap what you sow, and they actually sowed sweet F all really in the last decade. So it's like it's not the fault of, say, maybe the current regimes at Munster or Ulster or Connacht, but like they do have to bear some of the brunt of it, or at least take some of the responsibility for it as institutions, because there are failures there, even if it's not entirely their fault, I suppose, is the point I make, right?
Yeah.
But then, like, and I've said this in the past as well, like from the IRFU looking at it now, or from the point of view of the IRFU looking at it now, I kind of think let's discount that barren decade or so, or let's discount some of the misgivings of the past. Take it as a clean slate under David Humphreys now. Absolutely make sure that everything is pointing in the right direction and that the other 3 provinces are aligned in what they're doing. I think increasingly so they are. And maybe just give them dispensation, give them the leg up. I'm not even talking financially, maybe just allow them to use the money that they earn without restrictions. Sure. That's just what I don't know. We'll be coming back to it, I'm sure.
No, I look at it. I don't like. It's been a good year for Irish rugby as a whole, and you could say that there was no blowouts. The Munster Leinster game wasn't 40-0. You know what I mean? It was competitive-ish, but without ever really feeling it was contested. If that makes sense, I never felt Leinster were under massive pressure not to win it. But yeah, there is it's just that I don't like if that divide is what we want to where we want to go, fine. But I think we've slipped into this we've sleptwalked into it a little bit, and now it's been pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious, and we're not just as you said earlier. It's not just comparing Munster, Ulster, and Connacht with Leinster. Now the worry is that they'll actually drop off with somebody, with 4 South African teams potentially could be better than them at the end of the year. One of the Welsh teams could be better than them, Glasgow could be better than them, and Benetton could be better than them, and then it's a massive difference because we've been used to the top 4, the 4 of them being amongst the best in the URC. By and large, in the top 8 anyway. We've been quite used to feeling we can go and beat anybody, but we're not far off that, but that could slip away.